Okay, it's that time of the show. We call it
Around the Movie Block with The Rock.
But before we get started, this is a special night.
Yes.
This is the Oscars. I don't want to talk about who's going to win and who's not going to win because by the time people see this, the results are going to be there. But you know, one of my favorite things I want to touch on with Rocco, the favorite segment you can call the Oscars is when they do a tribute to those who are no longer with us. And I think
Memoriam.
Yeah, Memoriam. And I think two of the ones that are really going to stand out for me tonight is one is Kobe Bryant.
Yes.
As we know, one of the greatest basketball players that ever lived.
Yes.
Passed away in a horrific helicopter crash. But he also won an Oscar for a documentary film.
Actually, it's an animated short movie.
Animated short. So,
Dear Basketball.
Yeah, so, I mean, how many great basketball players ever won an Oscar? So they're going to pay a tribute to him. And then, of course, the legendary Kirk Douglas, who lived an incredible life of 103 years old.
Yes.
The father of Michael Douglas.
Died just recently, actually.
Yeah, just this week. So those are the two that I know, they're going to play, memoriam to so many, people in the industry. But those two, the legendary Kirk Douglas and Kobe Bryant. And the thing that really gets me about Kobe Bryant is I think that, being so young at 41 and the fact that he won an Oscar, I think he could have done so much more.
He was going places.
If his life hadn't been cut short. So, it's just so tragic on so many levels. Of course, losing his daughter.
And seeing this, you're able to see Dear Basketball, for free on the internet now, and I'll tell you, it really is like a fitting tribute to his. It makes his death all the sadder because it's like the most fitting love letter to the thing you love to do more than everything, which is play basketball, and it just makes it really affects you deep down, like how much he really dedicated himself to basketball, and it really shows like just the level of ambition that he had and the things that he wanted to do with his career and to other areas like movies and all that. So you really have to see this. It really is like touching, and his death just makes it all the more sad.
Yeah, and the one thing that I keep thinking about is that I think that if he had lived and if his daughter had lived, the impact on women's sports and women's basketball would have been enormous because Gigi, his daughter,
she has great potential to go into the WNBA.
Yeah, basketball experts already said that she had it. She was so talented, even at 13, and the top women's basketball program in the country, University of Connecticut, already wanted her. And if she'd gone to UConn and then gone on to WNBA with Kobe's support, it would have taken women's basketball to a whole new level. So, just another aspect of such a horrific story, but I'm sure the Oscars, because they always do a great job in that, will have a very moving tribute. But moving on, we have a movie to talk about this week, and with that, we hand it off to Rocco to talk about this week's movie review.
Yes, thank you. Definitely in relation to the Oscars tonight, the movie I'm doing this week is called Birds of Prey. It is directed by Kathy Yan, and it stars Margot Robbie, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Journey Smollett-Bell, Rosie Perez, and Ewan McGregor. It is the latest movie in Warner's DC Extended Universe. And I say it's related to the Oscars because one of the nominees for Best Picture is Joker, even though that's not part of the Extended Universe, but it is a DC movie. The plot of this movie, though, is in regards to criminal Harley Quinn, played by Robbie, who teams up with vigilantes The Huntress, played by Winstead, and Black Canary, played by Smollett-Bell, and police detective Renee Montoya, played by Perez, to save a young girl from crime lord Black Mass, played by McGregor. This particular movie is a spin-off of one of the more popular movies in the DC Extended Universe, known as Suicide Squad, and it definitely is one of the more popular movies for a particular reason, and why Suicide Squad was so huge, even though Suicide Squad was also so terrible, was because the Joker was a big part of this movie as a character, and the big aspect of Suicide Squad that was such a highlight was the subplot dealing with Harley Quinn and the love of her life, which is the Joker, although the Joker in this movie was played by a different actor, Jared Leto. And in a lot of ways, the Joker aspect was why Suicide Squad was big in the first place, even though it was not a really good movie. The problem with this particular movie is that it really, despite the fact that it's connected to Suicide Squad and the larger DC Extended Universe, it really has no sense of real strong character development. Even though Harley Quinn is a very popular character in the Batman franchise, you know, there's not much to the character in this movie. Like, even with that connection to the Joker, you know, without the Joker, this character and the other characters that are introduced in this movie, unfortunately, the motives for these characters are not terribly strong. So you really don't have that sense of, you know, connection that you will have with these characters that you had with, even though Joker, Howie and I, we saw the Joker together, and we thought it was a really bleak and really kind of very nihilistic kind of movie. The thing that really had the Joker, you know, to the point where it's now nominated for Best Picture is the fact that it did something different. It had a freshness to it. It took a subject that was in comic book lore for decades and managed to contemporize it to real world situations. And as bleak as the Joker was, it still should be given credit for the fact that it does touch on things that we go through in contemporary society, which is, you know, mental illness and, you know, the decay of, you know, urban decay of society. But with this movie, you have an obvious attempt to replicate the great Quentin Tarantino, who has a movie who's also being nominated, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But the thing that most people don't understand about Quentin Tarantino is even though he makes really kind of macabre, kind of really gritty kind of movies, is that he knows how to make these movies fun and make these movies have a social consciousness. And that's not easy to do, to make these kinds of movies that have, you know, brutality and this dark subject matter really still be fun and really passionate and really full of life. And it's a tricky thing to do, but it just shows that there are still, you know, filmmakers in Hollywood that are really unfortunately not able to really replicate what it is about the Tarantino formula that works so well with Tarantino himself. So unfortunately, it's just another long line in the case of Hollywood not really getting what makes Quentin Tarantino one of the most celebrated directors of the 90s and into the 2000s and beyond to today. So, I mean, yes, there are some moments where the movie's fairly entertaining, but a lot of the stuff in this we've seen in other action movies. We've seen it in Deadpool. We've seen it in these other kind of, you know, superhero movies. And it's getting to the point where it's getting very, very tired. And what makes it more problematic is, what made Suicide Squad successful was the fact that teenagers were the big audience for this movie. You know, and unfortunately teenagers can't see this movie because it's a rated R movie, and, you know, they're gonna have to jump through hoops to see a movie like this. And, you know, given the way teenagers are today, they're not going to have a strong incentive to want to see this and trek into a movie theater to see it, unfortunately. But the thing with this that, you know, yes, it's not quite as grim as Joker is, but it's still a pretty nasty movie to have to sit through. I mean, even given its more entertaining aspects, the great action that it occasionally has, you know, and just that and the lack of character motivation that will really make this movie resonate with people that have never, you know, read many comics or even, you know, read, you know, Birds of Prey to begin with. But yeah, it's one of their more, you know, their lower kind of, you know, comics that are not really as well known. You know, there's not much in this movie that's really going to engage with people, unfortunately. So it's a fairly formulaic and very rote kind of, you know, movie. And you know, with these kind of movies that are just not, you know, gonna really resonate with people. You know, I mean, there's only one Quentin Tarantino. There's one, he's really a cut above most of the type, you know, his type of material, which is this kind of exploitative, kind of gritty, violent kind of stuff. And it really shows that Tarantino is more the exception rather than the rule. I mean, we've seen dozens of filmmakers try to imitate him since the late 90s, and we're just showing with this movie, we're just not seeing anything that comes even close to replicating what makes Tarantino so special in Hollywood. So overall, I give Birds of Prey 2 out of 5 stars. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Rocco.
Hi.
All right.